It's funny. Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of like absolute precision.
Oh, right. It's almost like engineering.
Exactly. It's engineering. You fall off a bike, you break your arm, and the X-ray just shows that jagged white line right there on the screen.
Right. And the doctor just points a pen at it and says, well, there it is.
Yeah, they say, that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's binary.
Completely binary. I mean, the bone is either intact or it is fractured. And, there is something deeply comforting about that level of diagnostic clarity.
Oh, for sure.
We just naturally crave systems where the variables are visible, right? Where everything can be neatly categorized into a spreadsheet or, like you said, a definitive image.
Right. But then you step away from the X-ray machine and you walk into the world of human interaction.
Which is incredibly messy.
So messy.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, I'm talking about the world of negotiation, of persuasion, of trying to get someone, literally anyone, to see the value in an idea you have to offer.
Yeah, suddenly that X-ray machine is just, well, completely useless.
It's totally useless.
Yeah.
You are looking at a diagnostic landscape that is just incredibly murky. I mean, you can't just point to a screen and see why the person sitting across from you is resisting a perfectly logical proposal.
It's the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters.
Yes.
Because there is no illuminated display showing you the specific origin point of their psychological resistance.
Right.
You might lay out a flawless, mathematically sound argument for why your product or your idea, or honestly, even just your weekend plan, is the superior choice.
And it just completely bounces off of.
Completely bounces off. And the frustration that generates is immense, right? Because you feel like, hey, I am solving the equation correctly here.
Right, but the other person is just refusing to accept the answer.
Exactly.
And that profound frustration, that is exactly where we are heading today. So welcome to another custom-tailored deep dive.
It's a great topic today.
It really is. We're going to unpack the secrets of a wildly successful, yet seemingly contradictory approach to human interaction.
Contradictory is definitely the right word for it.
Yeah, and our source material today is actually drawn from the Arabic translation of a truly legendary text in the business world. It's called the 1 Minute Sales Person.
Or in Arabic, ACES, JCSE.
Right, by Spencer Johnson and Larry Wilson.
It is such a foundational text, and what's particularly compelling about analyzing it through the lens of this specific Arabic translation is that it offers some really beautifully nuanced phrasing to describe human motivation.
Oh, absolutely.
The way the Arabic text captures the essence of internal conflict and resolution, it gives us a very rich vocabulary for understanding how we actually influence one another.
Yeah, and I want to make sure we stress this right up front for you, the listener. Whether you are literally in sales carrying a heavy quarterly quota, or maybe you're an engineer trying to pitch a new controversial software architecture in a crowded board meeting.
Or even just a parent.
Right. Or you're just trying to navigate a daily negotiation with your partner about how to manage the household budget. This material holds some profound, completely counterintuitive wisdom for you.
Because we are dealing with the invisible architecture of agreement.
The invisible architecture of agreement. I love that phrasing.
It's an excellent lens for this, because fundamentally what we are looking at in this text isn't, it's not a tactical list of manipulative closing techniques.
No, not at all.
If you came here for a script on how to verbally corner someone into saying yes, I mean, this just isn't it.
You're in the wrong place.
Right. This material is a complete dismantling of what we traditionally think of as, quote unquote, selling or persuading.
It's a teardown.
It really is. It is a structural rebuild of how two humans arrive at a mutually beneficial decision.
So to understand that rebuild, we have to look at the narrative framing the source material uses, which is just, honestly, it's painfully relatable for anyone who has ever had to convince another human being to do something.
It hits very close to home.
It really does.
Yeah.
So we are introduced to a protagonist who is a hardworking, relatively successful salesperson.
On paper, anyway.
Right. On paper, they're doing the job. They're making the numbers. They are, collecting the paychecks.
But beneath the surface.
Exactly. Beneath the surface, they're stressed. They are physically and mentally exhausted, and they are feeling deeply unfulfilled.
Every single interaction feels like a grinding battle of wills.
Yes, a battle of wills.
Right.
Why is that so common?
Well, the core tension the authors establish right from the opening pages is the critical difference between pushing for a result versus facilitating an outcome.
Pushing versus facilitating. Okay, unpack that a bit.
Sure. So the traditional model of persuasion, the one that our protagonist is currently suffering under, it is entirely push-centric.
Okay.
It is based on the application of external pressure to move an object, or in this case, to move a person.
Right.
But if we look at the basic laws of physics, what happens when you apply continuous pressure to an object?
You generate friction.
Exactly. You generate friction, you generate heat, and you inevitably encounter equal and opposite resistance.
It's like trying to force two magnets together by the wrong poles.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Like, you can do it if you squeeze hard enough, but your hands are shaking the whole time. And the second you let go, they just violently snap apart.
That's a very accurate representation of the traditional high-pressure sale. The protagonist's exhaustion isn't just physical from, working 60-hour weeks.
Right, it's deeper than that.
It is a deep emotional fatigue from constantly fighting the current of human defense mechanisms because people do not want to be pushed.
Nobody does.
No. So the journey this protagonist goes on is entirely about discovering how to reverse that polarity.
How to flip the magnets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do you stop trying to push the rock up the hill and instead find the natural gravity of the interaction? How do you get the other person to actually want to walk with you?
Which means we have to look at the foundational philosophy they discover. So in the story, they seek out the advice of the president of a major, highly successful company.
Right. A leader who themselves used to be known as a one-minute salesperson.
Right. And this president doesn't hand our protagonist a new script or like a new pricing tier. They introduce a symbol.
A very simple yet highly disruptive symbol.
It's literally just a digital watch face displaying 01, just 1 minute, 60 seconds.
And the text is very clear that this isn't about rushing the interaction.
Right. It's not like, hurry up and finish in a minute.
Exactly. It's not about doing your job in 60 seconds. It serves as a constant physical reminder to take 1 minute, just 1 minute, to look at the customer or the person across the table as a unique human being.
A unique human being.
Great. The book is incredibly explicit about this. The most important resource of any institution or company is the customer.
Behind every single transaction, behind every invoice, behind every signed contract or agreed upon project, there is a human interaction.
Right. Think about what that 01 symbol actually functions as in the human brain. It is a cognitive interrupt.
A cognitive interrupt. What do you mean by that?
Well, we spend so much of our professional lives operating on heavily worn neural pathways. We are stressed, we are thinking about our own deadlines, and we just run on autopilot.
We totally do.
We see the person across from us not as a human, but as an obstacle to our goal or a stepping stone to our quota.
Right, they're just a means to an end.
Exactly. So taking 60 seconds to completely halt that automated machinery and actively recenter your perspective on the humanity, the fears, and the desires of the person in front of you, that is a radical act.
It stops the robotic, self-serving pitch dead in its tracks.
Dead in its tracks, yes.
So if we actually take that minute, if we actually stop looking at them as just a walking wallet or a mere signature on a contract, where does that leave us?
This leads us to what the text calls the magic paradox.
The magic paradox, or in the Arabic translation, fiasco rish.
Right. The magic paradox states, and I'll quote the concept here, I achieve greater financial and personal success when I stop trying to get what I want and start helping my customers get what they want.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it sounds like a philosophical riddle.
It really does. To get what you want, you must give up wanting it.
Right, very zen. But if we strip away the mysticism and look at the actual mechanics of human psychology, the reason this paradox works is incredibly logical.
It is entirely logical. Consider the physical and emotional posture of a traditional quota-driven salesperson.
Okay.
Their focus is 100% internal.
Right.
They are running calculations in their head about their commission. They are worrying about their manager's expectations. They are stressed about their mortgage.
Right, their brain is just a noisy calculator.
Exactly. And that intense internal focus generates a very specific kind of nervous, aggressive, almost predatory energy.
And the person sitting across the desk can pick up on that frequency instantly.
Instantly. Human beings possess an incredibly sophisticated, highly sensitive psychological radar for detecting when we are being viewed as a means to an end.
It's an evolutionary survival mechanism, isn't it?
It absolutely is. When we feel like someone... That's a beautiful metaphor. When you align your efforts with what the other person already wants, you are harnessing their own momentum.
Okay, I have to jump in here and push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Because while swimming with the current sounds lovely in a philosophical sense, we are talking about the real world here.
We are.
How do you actually operationalize selflessness in a fiercely competitive, metric-driven environment?
It's a fair question.
Right. I mean, a salesperson's job, or a project manager's job, or an executive's job is literally to hit targets.
Eh.
Companies need revenue. Initiatives need approval.
Yes, they do.
So how does completely abandoning what you need, the sale, the sign-off, how does that actually result in achieving those very things? It feels like telling a marathon runner to, stop caring about the finish line if they want to win.
It's the most common and probably the most important friction point people have with this text. And the resolution to this paradox lies in a very specific observation about human nature that the authors make.
Okay, what is it?
It is this. People absolutely hate being sold to, but they love to buy.
Oh, wow. People hate being sold to, but they love to buy. That's fascinating.
It really reframes everything.
I can feel the truth of that in my own life, honestly. I mean, think about the sheer rush of buying something you have been researching and saving up for.
It's a great feeling.
It's empowering.
Yeah.
It feels like you are taking control of your life, solving your own problems.
Exactly.
But the very second a salesperson steps in and tries to make you buy that exact same item, all the joy evaporates, and you just want to find the nearest exit.
Precisely. The joy of acquisition, the thrill of finding a solution to a nagging problem is deeply motivating.
Yeah.
But the resentment of coercion is equally powerful, just in the opposite direction.
Right.
So to answer your question about operationalizing this in the real world, your job is no longer to sell. You literally have to fire yourself from the job of selling.
Fire yourself from selling. Okay, so what's my new job?
Your new job title is facilitator of buying.
Facilitator of buying.
Yeah, right. If you are standing in front of them pitching and pressuring, you are actually a roadblock to their natural desire to solve their own problem.
Wow, you're a roadblock.
You are. By pivoting your focus entirely to what they want, you become a trusted guide in their purchasing journey. You aren't pushing them toward your goal. You are removing the obstacles that sit between them and their goal.
And the revenue, the signed contract, the agreement, that just naturally follows a byproduct of the friction being removed.
Exactly. It's a natural byproduct.
So if the focus completely shifts to the customer's desires, what happens to the salesperson's internal drive?
That's the next big hurdle.
Right, because how do they avoid feeling like a martyr to everyone else's needs? If I'm supposed to just facilitate what you want, how do I measure my own success?
Yes.
How do I build a career that actually sustains me? That tension introduces a massive difference between what the text calls a goal and a purpose.
And this is really the emotional engine of the entire philosophy.
It is.
This is where the text elevates itself from, a manual on behavioral tactics to a deep exploration of professional philosophy. The protagonist in our story is burning out, and the distinction between a goal and a purpose is the specific medicine for that burnout.
Let's define the terms as the text lays them out, because it's important to get this right.
Absolutely.
A goal is defined as something with a clear, unambiguous beginning and end, hitting a specific revenue target by the end of Q3.
Getting the client to sign the enterprise software agreement by 5 p.m. on Friday.
Right. Or finally getting your toddler to eat their vegetables before bedtime.
Good luck with that one.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But once a goal is achieved, it is over. You cross the finish line and the race stops.
Right.
A purpose, on the other hand, is continuous. It is a direction you travel in, not a destination you arrive at.
It provides meaning over the long term.
Yes. And the text distills the one-minute salesperson's purpose down to two very simple words.
Yeah.
Helping people.
Just helping people. And if we look at the psychological mechanics of living your life based solely on goals, you quickly see why it is a perfect recipe for the exact emotional exhaustion the protagonist is suffering from.
Right. Because goals end.
They do. Operating exclusively on goals puts you on what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill.
A hedonic treadmill. You're running as fast as you can, but staying in the exact same place.
Exactly. You grind for 3 months to hit that Q3 revenue target.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Right. And the moment you hit it, your brain releases a sharp spike of dopamine. You feel fantastic.
For about, 48 hours?
If you're lucky. And then what happens? Q4 begins. Your quota resets to 0.
Oh, that reset to 0 is brutal.
It's completely demoralizing. The dopamine fades, the target moves further out into the distance, and you have to start the exhausting sprint all over again.
The finish line is an illusion because it just keeps moving.
Yes. You never actually arrive, you just earn the right to keep running.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It is a nightmare. But a purpose, the continuous direction of helping people, that provides an endless, renewable source of emotional fuel.
Because while a quota ends, there is never an end to the number of people you can help.
Precisely. The text fundamentally redefines selling as the act of helping people achieve the feelings they want.
Achieve the feelings they want, not the objects.
Right. When your daily operating purpose is to facilitate positive feelings and solve tangible problems for other human beings, you are engaging completely different neural pathways in your own brain.
So it actually changes your brain chemistry.
It does. You aren't just riding the cheap, volatile dopamine spikes of hitting a number. You are accessing the sustained, long-term fulfillment associated with connection, empathy, and meaning.
So by aligning the goal, which is, let's be honest, making money, keeping your job, growing the business.
Which are all necessary things.
Totally necessary.
Yeah.
But by aligning those with the overarching purpose of helping people solve their problems, the professional achieves internal harmony. The goal stops being the entire point of your existence and instead becomes just a natural milestone you pass while walking the path of your purpose.
The goal is just a metric. It tells you how effectively you are executing your purpose.
Right.
If your genuine purpose is to help people and your product actually helps them, then closing the deal. The goal is simply the necessary mechanism to deliver that help to them.
It completely reframes the transaction from a self-serving extraction of their wealth into a mutually beneficial exchange of value.
Changes everything.
I want to pause right here and bring this directly to you, the listener, listening to this right now, because this is huge.
It really is.
Think about the project sitting on your desk. Think about the meetings clogging up your calendar for tomorrow morning. Are you just chasing a finish line?
Right. Are you just trying to get through the agenda?
Hit the metric, close the ticket, survive until 5 p.m.? Or is there an underlying continuous drive, a purpose,
Yeah.
that actually makes the work fulfilling?
Because if your professional life is just a series of disconnected goals, this source material strongly suggests you are on a fast track to profound burnout.
Yeah. If you can locate the purpose, if you can clearly answer the question, who am I helping today and how? The entire energy dynamic of your day changes.
It literally changes your physiology. You walk into a room entirely differently when you are there to offer help rather than when you are there to extract a concession.
The desperation vanishes,
It completely vanishes.
which perfectly sets up the question of application. How do we practically prepare our minds for this?
That's the logical next step.
Right, having established the philosophical mindset, the 0-1 symbol, the magic paradox, the shift from goal to purpose, how does one actually prepare for a high-stakes encounter using this method?
Well, in the narrative, the protagonist learns this from a character named Dr. Simons. She's an Alumni Association vice president.
Right.
And this takes us into what the text calls minute 1, before the sale, which is essentially the art of mental rehearsal.
Before the sale. So this specific phase is a masterclass in pre-interaction strategy. It focuses entirely on what happens in the quiet, empty room before the client ever walks through the door.
Or before you ever click the link to join the video call.
Right, the pregame. And the text lays out a very specific sequence. Let's walk through it.
Sure. First is empathy mapping.
Empathy mapping. And this isn't just like a corporate buzzword here.
No, it's a literal exercise. It's the act of putting yourself entirely, 100%, into the buyer's reality.
Okay, what's second?
Second, you study the features and benefits of your product, but, and this is key, you do not memorize them like a robot preparing to recite a spec sheet.
You study them specifically to understand exactly how they can help this unique customer achieve what they want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are translating features into personal benefits. Third, and this is the really critical step, is mental imagery and rehearsal.
Visualization.
Yes, you actively close your eyes and visualize the client being happy with the purchase. You visualize yourself succeeding and helping them.
And finally, the foundational requirement. You must genuinely, deeply believe that your product or service will actually benefit them.
You can't skip that one.
Yeah.
What is remarkable about this sequence is how closely it mirrors modern cognitive behavioral therapy and elite sports psychology.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Simons isn't teaching the protagonist a sales technique. She is teaching them advanced state management.
Advanced state management. I love that you brought up sports psychology because reading this, I kept thinking about an Olympic downhill skier.
Oh, that's a great visual.
You see them at the starting gate before the race, right?
Right.
Their eyes are closed, their body is twitching, they are physically leaning into turns that aren't even there yet.
Right. They are pre-living the entire course in their mind.
Yes, they are visualizing the perfect execution. But here is where this methodology tweaks that analogy in a fascinating way.
How so?
Well, the Olympic athlete is visualizing their own gold medal. They're visualizing themselves standing on the podium, getting the glory.
Right.
In the one-minute salesperson model, the gold medal you are visualizing isn't your own commission check.
Oh, I see.
The gold medal is the customer's relief. You are visualizing their win.
That is a brilliant distinction, and it is the crux of why this works. You are not running a mental simulation of them handing you a signed contract.
No.
You are running a simulation of them using the product 6 months from now and feeling the immense relief of their problem finally being solved.
Yeah. And why does this matter so much? Because visualizing your win can actually increase your anxiety.
Because you are focused on an outcome you can't entirely control.
Exactly. Visualizing their win and seeing yourself as the helpful guy who delivers it strips away that performance anxiety.
Because it's not about you anymore.
It's not about you.
When you enter a high-stakes negotiation, your sympathetic nervous system naturally flares up. It's a fight-or-flight response.
Yeah, your heart rate increases, your breathing gets shallow, you start sweating.
Right. But if you have already run the simulation in your mind, and the simulation ends with mutual benefit and a deeply satisfied client, your brain recategorizes the upcoming interaction.
It no longer perceives the meeting as a threat or a battle.
Exactly. It perceives it as an opportunity for human connection.
And that completely alters your physical presence in the room.
It transforms it. If you genuinely believe you are walking into a room to solve a friend's problem, your tone of voice naturally softens and drops in pitch.
Your posture opens up. You don't fidget.
Right. You become less aggressive, less defensive, and infinitely more consultative.
And bringing it back to human neurobiology, the client's brain will subconsciously pick up on all of these micro cues.
Yes, mirror neurons. If you walk in anxious, rigid, and predatory, their mirror neurons will fire and they will intuitively feel defensive.
But if you walk in calm, prepared, and genuinely focused on their well-being,
They will intuitively feel safe.
But, and we have to state this clearly, there is a massive caveat in the text and we cannot skip over it.
The integrity piece.
Yes. You cannot fake this.
No, you can't.
You cannot just close your eyes, visualize them being happy, and then try to sell them something you secretly know is garbage.
It will backfire spectacularly.
You have to genuinely believe that what you are offering will bridge their gap. If you are selling snake oil, your subconscious knows you are a fraud.
And despite all your mental rehearsal, your body language will eventually betray you.
The micro expressions of guilt or deception will leak out. They always do.
They always do. Integrity is the non-negotiable foundation of the entire approach. The mental rehearsal only functions if it is deeply rooted in the objective truth of the value you are providing. You cannot positively visualize a lie.
So let's assume the integrity is there. The mental preparation is complete. You've mapped their empathy. You've visualized their win. Your nervous system is calm.
You're ready.
You're ready. You walk into the room. The meeting begins. Now, what actually happens when you open your mouth?
Right, because eventually you have to talk.
Exactly. In the book, the protagonist learns the mechanics of this conversation from a wildly successful insurance agent named John Turnquist.
And this brings us into minute 2, during the sale, and the concept of finding the gap.
The gap. This is where the lofty philosophy meets the hard pavement of real-world dialogue.
This is the operational core of the human interaction.
Turnquist sets the stage with a golden rule that sounds almost cliché until you realize how rarely it is actually practiced. He says, I want to sell in a way that I'd like to be sold to.
Right. It sounds like something you'd see on a motivational poster in a break room.
Totally. But if you rigorously apply it to every sentence you speak, it radically alters the conversation. Because literally nobody enjoys feeling manipulated or pressured.
Absolutely not. And to execute that golden rule, to ensure the conversation remains collaborative rather than manipulative, Turnquist introduces the central mechanical concept of the entire process.
The gap.
The gap, or in the Arabic text.
Let's clearly define what the gap is. It is the exact, measurable distance between what the customer has now and what the customer actually wants.
That's it.
That empty space between their current reality and their desired reality is where the entire transaction lives.
And the salesperson's primary, almost exclusive job is to discover the shape and size of this gap and then determine if their product can safely act as a bridge across it.
But the problem with the traditional approach is that most salespeople act like terrible doctors.
Oh, the medical analogy again? Yeah.
Think about it. Imagine going to a physician. You walk in, sit down, and before you can even open your mouth to say your stomach hurts, the doctor starts aggressively pitching you on the incredible features of a new blood pressure medication.
They're just throwing pills at you.
Right. They're like, it has a coated shell, it's affordable, it comes in a great little bottle.
That is literal medical malpractice.
It is. You can't prescribe a solution without diagnosing the symptoms. Yet that is exactly what traditional salespeople do every single day.
They walk into a room and immediately start throwing out specs, pitching features, and offering discounts before they even know if there is a problem to solve.
They're building bridges in the middle of a desert where there is no river to cross.
That is a phenomenal analogy. And to illustrate how to do it correctly, Turnquist gives a really powerful example in the text using car tires.
The tire analogy is so good.
It really highlights the difference. When a traditional feature-focused salesperson is trying to sell a set of car tires, what are they actually selling?
They are selling vulcanized rubber.
Exactly. They are talking about tread depth metrics. They are pointing to mileage warranties. They are obsessing over the physical attributes of the object itself.
Which is entirely uninspiring. I mean, nobody lies awake at night dreaming about vulcanized rubber.
Exactly. Turnquist says that's not what the customer actually wants.
No.
Through a relaxed, curious conversation, Turnquist acts as an investigator. He finds out the customer has a family with 2 young kids. He finds out they have a long highway commute. He discovers that what the customer currently has is a set of worn-out, bald tires that make their car hydroplane.
Right, which makes the customer feel deeply anxious every time it rains.
Yes. That anxiety is their current reality. That's what they have.
And what they want is the peace of mind, knowing their children are safe in the back seat during a thunderstorm.
So, the gap isn't a lack of rubber. The gap is the emotional distance between terrifying anxiety and profound peace of mind.
Yes. He doesn't sell them a block of rubber. He shows them how these specific new tires deliver the safety their family desperately needs.
He simply offers the tires as the bridge over their specific emotional gap.
And notice how different that feels to the buyer. When you sell rubber and tread depth, you are asking the customer to spend money on an object.
And that creates friction, because nobody wants to part with their money.
Right. But when you sell safety and peace of mind, you are offering to alleviate their anxiety. You're offering a rescue rope.
The emotional resonance of the transaction shifts entirely.
But I'm going to play devil's advocate here again.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because in the messy reality of daily business, the gap isn't always sitting right there on the surface waiting to be found.
True.
What if the customer doesn't actually know what they want? What if the gap is hidden beneath layers of, corporate jargon or just personal confusion?
And that happens all the time.
You ask them what they need, and they just shrug and say, I don't know, we just need a better price on this software.
Right.
How do you bridge a gap that the customer themselves hasn't clearly articulated?
Well, that is the defining difference between a novice who has merely memorized the concept and a master of this methodology.
Okay.
The text highlights that Turnquist succeeds precisely because he completely abandons the role of a pitcher and fully adopts the role of an empathetic investigator.
An investigator.
Yes. You do not find a hidden gap by talking at the person. You uncover it through highly targeted, patient questioning.
So you aren't just taking their first answer and guessing the rest.
You never guess. Guessing leads to assumptions, and assumptions destroy trust.
So what do you do when they give a vague answer?
If the client says, we just need a better price, the investigator doesn't immediately offer a 10% discount.
Right, because that's just reacting.
Exactly. The investigator asks, I understand budget is crucial. What would a better price allow your department to do that you currently can't?
Oh, that's a great question.
Or, is the current cost of the software preventing you from achieving another specific organizational goal? You keep patiently peeling back the layers of the onion.
Asking why.
Yes. Why is that goal important? What happens if you don't hit it? You keep asking why until you hit the emotional or operational core.
You are actually helping the customer articulate their own latent needs.
Very often, the greatest service you provide to a client isn't the product itself, but the clarity you give them about the true nature of their own problem.
Which means you have to be willing to do something that, historically, people in persuasive roles are notoriously terrible at doing.
Which is?
You have to shut your mouth.
Yes, you really do.
You have to stop talking, and you have to actually listen. Which brings us to the mechanics of trust, the role of active listening, and how this whole process finally culminates in the close.
Because to uncover that deep hidden gap, the checklist for minute 2 relies heavily on active listening.
Active listening is perhaps one of the most frequently referenced and least understood soft skills in the modern business world.
Oh, without a doubt. Most people think active listening just means remaining quiet and maintaining eye contact while you wait for your turn to speak.
Right. It's just nodding your head saying, while your brain is frantically formulating your next brilliant counter-argument.
Exactly, but the text provides a very specific, actionable, and vital mechanism for true active listening.
Okay, what is the mechanism?
Once you have played the role of the investigator, and the customer has finally peeled back the onion and shared their true needs and their true gap, the salesperson must accurately summarize and repeat those needs back to them.
Summarize and repeat.
Yes. You literally look at them and say, let me make sure I truly understand your situation. You are currently experiencing this specific frustration with X, and what you really need to get to is the peace of mind of Y. Have I understood that correctly?
The neurochemical response a human being experiences when that happens is profound.
It really is. Think about the modern world. Everyone is shouting, everyone is rushing, and almost no one feels genuinely understood.
So true.
When you take the time to accurately summarize someone's complex problem and repeat it back to them without judgment, and this is crucial, without an immediate sales pitch attached to it, it is incredibly disarming.
The client literally experiences a physiological sigh of relief.
Yes. It triggers a deep, stabilizing sense of psychological safety.
It proves to them that you are actually in the room with them. You aren't just waiting to run a pre-written script. You heard them.
Exactly. It completely neutralizes the adversarial nature of the negotiation.
You are no longer two combatants sitting across from each other, hoarding information and arguing over a price point.
By accurately summarizing their words, you metaphorically walk around the desk to their side of the table. You are now both sitting side by side looking at the problem, the gap together.
You have formed a temporary alliance to solve a puzzle.
A temporary alliance. I like that.
But the text is absolutely ruthless about what happens next.
Ah, yes. The honesty checkpoint.
The honesty checkpoint. Because if you have done the investigation, you've found the true gap, you've summarized it so they feel heard, and then you look at your product and you realize your product does not actually bridge their specific gap. What do you do?
The text demands that you say so.
You must be brutally honest about the limitations and obstacles.
If your tires don't fit their car or your software doesn't integrate with their legacy systems, you do not try to force it.
You don't try to hack a solution just to get the sale.
No. You look them in the eye and tell them it's not a fit.
And this is exactly where the traditional quota-driven mindset panics.
Total panic. The internal voice screams, "What are you doing? You're walking away from revenue. You are losing the sale."
But the one-minute salesperson understands that the overarching purpose is to help.
Right.
If you sell them a bridge that you know is going to collapse under their weight, you might get a short-term commission, but you have destroyed the relationship.
You have destroyed your reputation in the market.
And you have compromised your own internal sense of integrity.
By admitting your product isn't the right fit, you lose a single transaction, sure, but you generate an immense, almost unbreakable level of trust.
That person will remember your honesty.
They will likely refer 10 other people to you because you definitively proved that you valued their safety and their success over your own immediate wallet.
That is the long-term ROI of integrity.
It pays dividends forever.
So if the product does fit, what does this all mean for the actual close?
The dreaded close.
Right. In traditional sales, the close is framed as this terrifying high-stakes moment where you have to trick or trap the person into handing over their money.
It's all about pressure tactics.
But the text suggests that if you do the first 90% of the process correctly, if you've shifted to a purpose of helping, if you've mentally rehearsed their success, investigated deeply to find the true gap.
Summarize their needs to build psychological safety.
Right, and honestly confirm that your product serves as a sturdy bridge over that gap, then the closing isn't some high-pressure parlor trick.
It is entirely stripped of anxiety. It is no longer a trap door you spring on an unsuspecting victim.
Exactly. It's just the logical, natural next step of a mutual agreement. You don't need a slick line.
You just explicitly, naturally ask to move forward. You say, well, it looks like this software bridges the gap we just discussed perfectly. Shall we go ahead and get the paperwork started so we can solve this for you?
The pressure is entirely absent because the customer has already bought into the solution.
They help design the bridge with you.
Right. You are just handling the logistical details of a solution they have already internally chosen.
The close is just the administrative confirmation of the help you are providing.
It is such a radically different, peaceful paradigm for doing business.
Peaceful is a great word for it.
Let's zoom out for a moment and look at the big picture summary of the journey we've just taken through this incredible source material.
We started with a protagonist who is burned out, cynical, and exhausted by the constant friction of pushing products onto resistant targets.
And through these encounters with masters of the craft, we watch them transform from an aggressive pitcher into a purposeful facilitator.
They adopted the 0-1 symbol, training themselves to pause the automated machinery and take that critical minute to recognize the humanity in the interaction.
They embrace the counterintuitive power of the magic paradox.
Right. I achieve my own success only when I stop worrying about it and focus entirely on helping you get what you want.
They uncoupled from the hedonic treadmill of chasing goals and tapped into the endless emotional fuel of a continuous purpose.
They learned the neurological hack of mentally rehearsing the customer's happiness before even walking into the room.
They stopped diagnosing without examining and became an investigator, looking for the precise gap between current pain and desired relief.
And finally, they proved they were actually in the room by summarizing, maintaining absolute honesty, and turning the close from a combative extraction into a collaborative act of service.
Ultimately, selling, persuading, or negotiating stops being something you do to someone and becomes something you do for and with someone.
It restores dignity to both sides of the table.
It really does. And I want to bring this right back to you, the listener, as we wrap up this deep dive.
How can they apply this today?
Exactly. You don't need to be carrying a quota to use this. You can apply this 1-minute checklist to your very next human interaction.
It doesn't have to be a multi-million-dollar enterprise contract.
No. If you are walking into your manager's office for a salary negotiation, or you are pitching a new workflow process to your skeptical team.
Or you are trying to convince your family where to go for the holidays.
Yes. Before you speak, pause. Interrupt the autopilot. Ask yourself, what is the gap between what this person currently has and what they fundamentally emotionally want?
How can I stop pushing my agenda and instead position my idea as a sturdy bridge over their specific gap?
If we pull all of these threads together and connect them to the broader human experience, it leaves us with a rather profound final thought to ponder.
I think so, yes. If selling, and by extension, all forms of persuasion, leadership, and negotiation, is truly just the simple act of helping someone get what they genuinely want, what does that reveal about the opportunities we avoid in our own lives?
Oh, wow.
Are we actually afraid of being rejected by others, or have we simply been too busy, too stressed, and too focused on ourselves to take 60 seconds to ask what the other person is desperately searching for?
Wow. That really does reframe the whole picture, doesn't it?
It forces you to look at every interaction differently.
It turns out that diagnostic X-ray machine for human interaction wasn't broken after all. We were just pointing it in the completely wrong direction.
We were constantly pointing it at ourselves.
Right, looking at our own goals, our own quotas, our own anxieties, our own needs. But the very moment you turn that lens outward and focus it on the person sitting across from you, the muddy waters clear up instantly, and you can see exactly where to build the bridge.
It's a powerful shift.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of agreement. Keep questioning your assumptions, keep learning, and we will catch you on the next one.